with you is to review the financial policies and see where there were questions on them. And we did meet and discuss them. I don't know if any of you saw what our discussion was when Heather was trying to go over what some of the potential changes were. So I don't know if we want to wait for Heather to start to go through them, or if, I assume that everybody's had a chance to look at the policies, and if anybody has any questions before we get started, we could start there, whatever your pleasure is.
That's fine.
The one question I had was, I know that the auditors had proposed some changes or recommended some policy changes to be consistent with the borrowing component. Did those get included? That was 2 years ago, I think. Not this last audit, the one before, because they came up with saying that your policy said something, but they didn't consider something.
We clarified it.
Okay,
It was
good.
basically, it was they didn't
Read the policy correctly.
understand
Right,
the
okay,
policy
yeah.
as we meant it to be understood.
Okay, so that's already in there.
The core confusion was exempted debt versus regular debt.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
Yeah, and I did also discuss with Heather that the only thing that I saw that we did not discuss was Section 3.05 warrants was not something that we put in the financial policies. That was you. And I was going to say,
That kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, well,
Is
that's-
that where it belongs?
it's probably fine because it's a financial policy, but it should clarify that it's the accounts payable warrant.
Okay.
Because there's other warrants, so that was the only thing that stood out to me, again, because we
We
didn't
tend to have
put
the
it in
payroll
there.
warrant, the payroll deduction warrant, and the accounts payable warrant are the three we tend to look at on a regular basis.
Yeah, and then I would just put that, I would identify that that's what you're talking
But
about.
I'm wondering if it belongs where it is. When we get there, I was going to just make the note that it just seems, I don't know, it just seems to hang out in the middle of several other policies. It just,
That's more of a procedure.
More of an
than
administrative
It's not
policy, right,
really a
yeah.
policy.
right.
Yeah, then it is possible that, like, we could talk about eliminating it. I mean, that's,
Well, just moving it probably to some
yeah.
administrative.
I will just say this, that the Finance Committee has no, as far as I can tell, and I didn't ask the Finance Committee this, but I'm going to assume that we do not have any feeling about what they do with their warrants. Is that,
Fair statement.
Yeah.
yeah, fair
It only
statement?
says that we got to see them by 5:30 to approve them.
Yeah, yeah.
The part when it could change, there is a provision in the law that we could designate one member of the Board of Selectmen to sign on behalf of the board, or to actually designate, I don't know if we could designate the town manager, but there was something to, instead of having to have the majority of the Board of Selectmen sign, we could designate that, but we've not chosen to do that.
Okay. All right.
Thinking about that, or?
I don't think that's on the table at the moment. I don't think it's
Okay.
needed. The system works pretty well at the moment.
All right, as I understand it, did anyone, actually, I should just ask on the Finance Committee, take a look at the policies and have any recommendations for changes that you did not already see highlighted? No? No? Okay. Then I know that there was some discussion on under borrowing, talking about the regular tax levy, and there was some question about the taxing to the 2.5%, and whether or not that policy needed to be changed. And I know that you've brought it up several times, so I don't know if you want to speak to it.
I feel that it should not be a policy that we increase it to 2.5 every year. I think it could say something like no more than 2.5%.
I think when we discussed it, one of the things we said was that this doesn't say that we're going to do it to 2.5%. It just says the amount allowed by 2.5, which could be any amount up to that. But if it makes you more comfortable, what we could say is plus an increase allowed by Prop 2.5. And then
That would be better. An
And that would
increase.
be
Okay.
basically any amount up to and including 2.5%.
Yeah, I think that's.
But I don't know when we get to the point where, that's just my personal opinion, is I don't know when we get to the point where we wouldn't.
Effectively, that's at town meeting, because
Right.
town meeting can vote not to spend all the money.
Right.
Ultimately, that's the time when we effectively set the tax rate, is when we decide what we're going to spend.
Yep.
Right.
But we could come in with a budget that was at 2%. We don't have to go in with a budget that's at 2.5. In my opinion, if we went 5 years at 2%, that in effect eliminates one whole year of 2.5. And I think that's something to strive for. I think I talked to a lot of people that are older in the community who, you know, one lady was crying at the pancake breakfast yesterday because she can't afford to stay in town anymore. It's a real problem for the aging population. And to just automatically say it's going up 2.5%, I think is disrespectful of the people that have been here for a long time, have paid taxes for a long time, and just can't afford to stay here any longer. You know, we don't have affordable senior housing. You know, we haven't been able to do anything about that.
Well, I
We're
also,
driving people out of town. And I think the people that I've talked to say, listen, if you raise the taxes 2.5%, they're going to spend every dime. If you raise it 2%, then they'll just spend that. You know, that we spend everything we've got. I mean, I hate to bring it up, but that license permit fee that the Board of Selectmen just passed, that it doesn't, the licenses, the new e-permitting software is going to cost $35,000 a year to maintain. We only raised the fee schedule enough to cover half of that. The rest should be absorbed into the budget. Why? We should have cost accounting. If it's going to cost $32,000 to maintain this e-permitting software, we should add that to the license fees. And, you know, I was the only one who voted against it. That's the kind of thing that drives people crazy. You spend every dime.
okay. Well, I think the other thing that it might be worth taking a look at is, you know, and I know we have an abatement process for especially people who are older and have run into financial difficulty, and I don't know if there's a way to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in order to get the tax write-off program or something, you have to be really very, very low.
The other thing,
Qualify for that stuff.
a couple of things. I would say that it's not just the older population. There's a younger population that is concerned with what they can afford to pay in the town. So we always need to be aware of taxes. I would say I understand the concept of tax it and we'll spend it because we do that. But the reality is that we are only spending on items that the town has determined that were appropriate, and we can have a difference of opinion on what's appropriate or not, because there's a lot of things that when you listen to the budget hearings, we are not able to do because we don't have enough money to do all the things we need to do. And I would say that's every department. I think John Mayall once said when he was on the Finance Committee is that if everybody's screaming at the same amount, you're probably doing the budget correctly. If somebody's screaming and somebody's not screaming, you probably ought to look at that one and say maybe we're giving too much to them. But I would support the thing plus the increase, you know, what you propose to do up to the limits, but I'm not ready to propose an automatic thing that we're not going to do it, because I would want to look at what are the needs of the departments. The other thing that we hear on the other side beside taxes is asking for more services, more people, more expenses, and I think the Finance Committee in the town has done a pretty good job on, with the town manager budgets throughout the years of trying to come up with reasonable spending plans. We've expanded things with the police and fire department recently. That costs money. And so I think we need to continue to have a robust discussion at town meeting, the budget hearing process, for what we're actually spending on each department.
Okay. And
I
let me
would
just,
like to have a discussion about the budget process. Will that happen tonight?
potentially, it depends on how close we bump up to the public hearing. But just to bring you up to, the recommendation was to change it to plus and increase allowed by Prop 2.5. we didn't vote to accept that or anything, or make that recommendation, and I suppose we could if somebody wanted to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we make that change.
I'll second.
You can't second her
Oh, I
motion.
can't second.
You can make a motion on this side of the table,
Totally
though, but we'll wait for them to
Sorry.
vote, and then we'll
Okay. I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Sure, just a question. Is this a selectman policy or finance committee policy?
Selectmen. It's a town policy. It's the one that was in the
Just
selectmen's.
check it. in terms of-
It ultimately ends up being our policy, but we seek their input.
Okay, because this portion of the meeting isn't on their agenda, so I don't know if you can vote on the policy.
Which portion of the meeting isn't it? We're
Um,
voting on policy, the 6:30 meeting one you have, or the 7:30 meeting one you have?
Did you post two separate
I did,
agendas?
yeah.
Okay,
The
just check.
the website didn't show it as easily as it usually does. You have to go into the one link, but then it was actually posted as a separate
Our new
meeting.
website is trickier for town calendar.
We're going to get there.
Just saying.
We're going to get there.
Oh, it absolutely is, because I was looking for the postings under a different section, and then went to town calendar just to be sure it was actually up, so, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what we did, because basically, at the time that I posted for the public hearing, I was not sure that you folks were posting through the public hearing.
Okay.
So I posted it as two
It's a
separate
separate
minutes.
agenda for this portion. Okay.
Yes.
I was just gonna do the same thing.
Okay,
So anyway, so
thank you so much.
I think there's a difference between what Mrs. Luck might be proposing for discussion and our policy section. I mean, we're defining a policy that says, what is the tax levy? And the tax levy is last year's plus 2.5% plus growth. That's what a levy is. Now, are we going to execute to that levy or not is a strategic decision. The truth of the matter is traditionally, when the town manager does a budget, she has some targets. She asks the department heads to come in with a budget, a service level budget that meets those targets, and then to list what they believe their requests are above those targets. We debate that prior to bringing that to town meeting, then we bring it to town meeting. Other people bring other things to town meeting. In order for us to jump to what Mrs. Luck is suggesting, I think we would, way early in the process, have to have a strategic decision that says we want to cut our service level by some amount, or our target by a certain amount, to begin to try to achieve that. But it doesn't change the definition of what the levy is. And I think in the policy, I mean, if you want to change a word or two to allow for us to go either direction, that's fine. But to me, the levy is the levy. That's what the definition is.
Well, you have to understand, this definition is within the borrowing policy, and the reason it's here is to understand what's available for borrowing within the picture. This policy sends a message to the auditors and to the lenders, what's going to be available. So we're not actually adopting a policy of whether we're going to go to the max.
Right.
We're basically describing this as, this is what we would be defining it for the purposes of this policy. And I agree that's why I support this motion, is that this is not tying our hands. It's basically saying an increase allowed by Prop 2.5. We still can go to the 2.5% or go to zero.
And the reality is the town could vote to go above that with an override, or below that with some kind of town meeting proposal.
Right.
Right, well, if you guys are actually making a vote to accept it, then we probably don't have to make a vote to recommend it.
So we finished is there any further discussion?
I just feel like an increase allowed by Prop 2.5 gives you more flexibility. The increase allowed by Prop 2.5 sends a message, we're increasing 2.5% semantically, in my view.
Sure.
So I think changing that to "and" isn't really going to be a showstopper. But it gives us more flexibility,
Yeah.
I believe.
Exactly.
Are there any potential issues with it, we won't have anybody writing bonds looking at that saying, oh, no, that's too big. Okay, yeah, then that's fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Heather, do you want to take over now? Heather, would you take over, please?
have 3.02 capital budget. I don't think there were any questions on that policy then. Free cash was the next
Okay.
section, 3.03. And specifically, the priorities for applying free cash. So the proposed language would delete the previous section about, which was number 2, the next highest priority for use of free cash to fund purchases of materials needed to repair and/or replace town roads and signage. These purchases should be limited to the amount of monies remaining in the free cash account or the amount of materials that the Department of Public Works personnel and equipment can realistically be expected to utilize in the current fiscal year. And the reason for deleting that is now included in the budget, in the operating budget. We have earmarked an additional $50,000 each year for pavement management. And, so no longer see that as a next highest priority for use of free cash.
Sure.
So that would be potentially replaced with the next highest priority use of free cash should be to fund an amount equivalent to at least 10% of the previous fiscal year certified general fund free cash for deposit into the OPEB trust fund on an annual basis. And this reflects the OPEB policy that's later in financial policies.
And where is the connection to the pavement management program that talks to using excise tax?
It's been an unwritten rule. Yeah.
The theory was we were going to take a certain amount of the increase of excise until we get to the total
Right.
expenditure of $1 million between Chapter 90 and that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that might be good to include that in your budget message, which I think you've done
It
it in
is
your
every-
presentation.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And also to include the third highest priority use of free cash to be to fund an amount for deposit into the special purpose stabilization account, provided the deposit is consistent with all stipulations in the policy on stabilization funds. The amount is to be calculated each fiscal year during the capital planning process and should be based on the cost of upcoming large capital improvement requests. All else remains the same.
Okay, the amount to be calculated each fiscal year during the capital planning process, does that mean that basically when free cash becomes available, there already has to be something identified in the 5 to 10-year projections that that money will be, I'm not sure I understand what that means.
During the capital planning process, and after certification of free cash, we would review the total request for the upcoming fiscal year. So we've typically done a raise and appropriation amount about 300,000 each year, 350. And in addition to that, we use free cash and unexpended capital articles to fund the capital plan.
But I read this as 5 years out, we've got the next ladder truck, or we've got a school roof or something else like that, that the assumption is we're looking at what do we need to start planning for now.
Yes.
That's precisely it, because we do have visibility 5 years out for anything under $100,000 or less, and 10 years out for more than that. So we've got some visibility of what's coming up.
So you could target some of that money for that and not spend it?
Well,
Right, you wouldn't spend it now and you wouldn't borrow it later.
Yep.
So in 4 years, instead of borrowing money for the fire truck, we'd be using this money that we put aside. every year.
Okay, great, so you don't spend it on this year's request necessarily?
that's exactly right.
Okay, great.
Right, because once it goes in order to get it out, it has to be voted at town meeting. So
Yeah.
2/3 of the people at town meeting have to vote to take the money out to pay for the fire truck once it goes in. It goes in easy, it comes out very hard.
I like that.
3 years now we've been doing that, is that correct?
This would be the third.
This will be the third.
Okay, so the amount is to be calculated each fiscal year during the capital planning, but the amount, I guess what I'm not sure of is what does that mean? Okay, so if I have,
Flexible, basically, because we're looking at, so if, you know, the coming fiscal years and what our normal capital budget is, capital planning budget is, we're planning for some large, and sometimes that's gonna change, there's some
Yep.
things that come up. So we review that every capital planning
Right.
process, every cycle.
so in the spring, you will have calculated what you're going to look for in the fall.
For annual town meeting, to
All right, so if,
earmark those
because,
funds.
all right, but we're moving, okay, so you're earmarking them at, I guess where I get confused is, all right, so we don't know what we have for free cash until the fall.
Correct, so in the capital planning process starts in the fall, have a recommendation by around January.
Okay, but the calculation, where this is saying the calculation of where of what's going to be put into that, are we just saying that it's going to be whatever's left? Or we're saying that there's a calculated amount that has been set at what time?
Well, it depends on what's remaining.
I see it as,
So you
it's the
have-
third priority after you've addressed,
Right, that's right.
you know, OPEB and, well, the first one is stabilization, then OPEB, and then you look at what you're looking for in capital. And maybe you do all of it, maybe you do as much as you can afford, maybe you do your capital request and you still have more to go to priority 4.
So this calculation is going to be done in January or February of this next year based on what was just certified. So it's what, for the annual town meeting, we're going to go into town meeting and know what these 3 accounts are going to be based on what was certified for June 30th and as a result of what the budget is going to be at town meeting.
Okay, so then we're not voting in a couple of weeks to put anything into the stabilization fund?
At the special town meeting.
We
Oh, actually, the
could.
first.
All right, so that's why I'm confused.
This is talking about free cash. We're not, we'll get to the town meeting, special town meeting warrant. That's not talking about you.
That's not talking about putting free cash anywhere.
Right,
Okay, so we're not allocating free cash until May.
right.
Okay, thank you, that's probably where I'm confused.
But I'm actually a little confused too, because where it says the amount is to be calculated each fiscal year during the capital planning process, and it's based on the cost of upcoming large capital improvement requests, isn't it really based on what's left?
No, it's basically because we're not going to take it out once we put it, we'll put it in May, and we might not anticipate trying to bring it to town meeting to take out for 3 years. And then in 3 years, when we're ready to buy the fire truck for, like $1 million, then we would come back to town meeting and say, we'd like to take the money from the stabilization fund and apply it against that. But in the meantime, we can't use it for immediate stuff because we just put it away.
But this is also doesn't assume that we don't have to appropriate all of free cash in a year. If you don't appropriate, it just rolls over to the following year.
Oh, okay. So you can keep some money in free cash?
Yes.
You don't, it doesn't have to go to
That's correct.
1, 2, or 3?
Right.
Or 4, which is you're allowed to, town meeting to do one-time expenditures in addition to 1, 2, and 3.
But do we need a second sentence?
The amount to be calculated, so that's a procedural part.
I think we do, just because of looking at the number of capital improvement requests that this town has for the next 5 or 10 years is quite, there won't be any, we won't have free cash that's running around looking for a capital improvement request to be applied to. And so if we can, to the extent that we can, that this allows us, pave or save money, put aside money for large capital projects later on, it will do 2 things. Either we'll be able to buy the project outright, or else at the minimum, we'll be able to minimize the amount of borrowing we'll have to do.
But you're kind of saying, we always have that stuff, so,
Exactly. It's,
yeah.
for me, that sentence
right, doesn't add anything.
doesn't add
Except
anything.
confusion.
Yeah.
Well, we also, it's important to weigh how much we're going to put away for the next year and also what we're going to defer for this,
Yeah.
out of this year, the needs that we need this year.
Yeah.
So we need to look at what we need to spend out of free cash for the capital budget this year, determine what's important. If it's all important, then maybe we don't have any left over for
Yeah.
the stabilization. But that's the analysis and the planning that we need to do, and then also identifying those large projects like a fire truck or whatever, and say, okay, we know we need to take this percentage of it, and maybe some of the small things that people want, like a dump truck or a personal vehicle or whatever for somebody, doesn't make the budget because we need to
Yeah.
save more for the future. It's just an analysis that needs to happen every year, and the capital planning should be identified as the board who does that.
Okay, so just to go back to, I think I'm understanding now. The fog is clearing, and I think what it is, okay, so you're going to tell the capital planning committee, you have $700,000 because we had free cash. And they're going to say, okay, here's our current needs. And then they're going to say, oh, there's still 200,000 left. We'd like to put that into the stabilization fund because we see a fire truck that's going to cost $1.5 million in 3 years, and we'd like to make sure that we have funds available to tap. That's the part that I'm missing. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to also address one more point. I do agree somewhat with Phyllis and Mark that it doesn't add a whole heck of a lot, but it does have the virtue of giving us some more institutional memory. These committees change for regularity, so you've got a sentence in here now that sort of reminds people that this is exactly the process. That's my point.
So town meeting would approve, allocate, whatever's
Yes.
recommended allocated, the voters would approve to put it into that rainy day fund.
The special purpose?
Special purpose.
Yes.
And once it's in there,
And would approve to take it out.
yeah, and without that approval, it can't get leverage for something else.
Yeah, you could, the voters would still have the right to
Yeah, they would,
vote on a
yeah.
purpose for it with a 2/3 vote.
Yep, okay.
Okay, thank you, I understand that. And I do agree that it might be, do we talk about when free cash is assigned? So it's free cash is assigned or appropriated during the budget process. I don't know if it makes sense to add a line or not, actually. But in terms of what the priorities are, I don't have a problem with them. The only thing that I continue to go back to is that it would be nice to have something that if we were close to being able to close out a loan somewhere, it would be really special if we could. So I don't know if that would be something that we'd want to write in there or just leave it, and that could be our one-time expenditure.
We've actually, the finance director, treasurer collector, and myself met with the financial advisor the other day, and that's one question we asked, if there were any loans. What would be the benefit to the town of paying those off early?
Is there?
We're waiting for, we just.
Oh, okay.
I think that falls under 4. I mean, you could itemize it, but it's kind of like after you've looked at your priorities, if you still have any money, do you want to look at things like that?
Or do you want to weigh that against, like, whatever that special project is in terms of priorities? Because I just keep looking at, like, at what point we're addressing Turkey Hill. Because that's coming sooner than later. So.
When the school board asks us to.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just thinking, though, that it's probably, how old is Turkey Hill?
1968. 50 years.
This year.
50 years this year, okay.
So that goes to the cost of upcoming large capital improvement projects.
Yep.
Yeah, but we were spending it on a fire truck.
We need that too. You need both.
I
So you
know.
gotta get a balance. The other thing, just to answer the question about the debt, is that the theory always is that it's always good to borrow because future money paying back is worth less than it is now. subject to the interest, but you have to look at this policy in conjunction with your other limits on debt policy. That, as you said, you may want to pay down this debt so that you can take on new debt and not bump against that limit. So
Exactly.
Yep.
that's when you may want to do some of the other stuff, so.
Yeah, and that was my point, is that, yeah, we look at some of the debt coming down, and we look at and if there was a way to address it, then I would just like to, that's all.
So you could throw it in 4.
Yeah, well, that's the point, it's like, we don't have to necessarily add language or not.
No, but you could, because that institutional memory thing, people might not think of it, you know.
Specific departments and/or special projects or reduction of loans. Could add language like that. Because it's not quite a special project, it's not a expenditure for a specific department.
Might be worth putting in.
What do you think, Heather? These two, you want to hold off until the
Wanna wait
advisor?
until you get an answer?
I mean, because we don't try to use free cash for operating expenses, and I consider maturing debt and interest operating.
Yep.
So,
Because it's debt service?
yeah.
It's old capital projects, not new capital projects.
Well, once it's built in as debt service, it is operating.
Yep. We can come back to that after.
Okay.
It's funny that it's operating.
Just going back one to grab a typo, 303B2, in the certification discussion there, I think it's supposed to be revenue deficits, if so.
Yep. Very few have to use some English language.
I thought it was a Latin word. But no vowel. So
Okay.
do you want to take votes on this section?
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve the removal of the previous Section 2 and the insertion of the new Section 2 and the new Section 3 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
3.04, stabilization and general reserve funds, and the section B. The finance committee had discussed about not including the special purpose stabilization fund, and I believe the zoning stabilization fund as well. Zoning incentive stabilization fund within that 5% calculation, because those are gonna, well, the special purpose stabilization will fluctuate. It's not maintained at a certain level. It's gonna fluctuate with our needs.
Right, and actually, what ends up happening is you go to take money out of the special purpose stabilization fund, and you gotta turn around and put it back into the general fund, because you've got a policy that says that it's not gonna fall below 5% aggregate. So now it's like, why did you bother taking it out of the other fund? I mean,
So I think you could just delete everything after general stabilization fund in the first line of number 1.
but I'll leave that to you folks to, because I know it's in there that it's 4, we leave the other at 4%, but I also anticipate that when Summer Street project is finished, that the Tri-Town Special Purpose Fund, I would assume, will be expended on something. And then again, the special fund, if we put $500,000 in and take $500,000 out, then you have to put 500, it's like taking it from one pocket and putting it in the other.
Which is silly.
Thank you, I thought it was silly too. That's just me. If we ever get $500,000 in there, that's the other. So I don't know how you folks feel about that, or how the rest of the finance, if the finance committee has anything to add to that.
I'm okay with it.
So we would delete the words "and all dedicated stabilization funds of the town"?
Correct.
I will ask, what I don't know is what that means in terms of a current, if that creates a current situation in terms of, because
Oh, yeah.
we don't have that much money in the stabilization fund, so this is probably a good time to do it.
Good planning.
The 5, Karen? A little over 5%?
We're all right, which is including the general stabilization fund. Now,
Okay.
Good.
I would move that we strike the words "and all dedicated stabilization funds of the town" under the B, stabilization fund policy guidelines, 1, fund balances, first sentence.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The investment policy statement, so there was a separate handout related to that. I'll let Karen lead this discussion of the investment policy. So that, I'll just state that the goal was to try to find a more condensed, simpler version of this policy instead of a 7-8 page policy, and Karen found a great one, and we all reviewed it. And thought it was very well. Yeah.
Thanks,
So was
Karen.
this amended in July?
I'm not sure when we adopted the original policy. Do you know, Heather? Oh, October 6th of 2015 is when we adopted the original policy. And this policy basically mirrors what's already there. It just, the existing policy is very repetitive. There's a lot of sections within the existing policy that repeat themselves in each one of the sections. So basically, this is just simplifying the policy and adding a few references that didn't exist in the prior policy. Towards the end of the policy on page 3, it addresses the investment of trust funds and bond proceeds. I don't know that that was included in the prior policy, and there also is a section at the very end on page 4 that addresses the OPEB liability trust fund. But again, there's really no significant change to this policy other than to clarify it and simplify it and have sections not be repeated within each one of the sections of the existing policy.
So the proposal is to replace 306 with these 4 pages.
I would make that a motion. I think that it does clarify the language. It updates it, as Karen said, to add the current changes that we've done with the other trust, the other stabilization funds.
Second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, I should just, the finance committee has to sign off on this, so I'll just ask if anybody has any questions or...
Can I just ask a question about the diversification?
Absolutely.
Did that change, and I might be misreading it, but it looks like on the original it was a 10%, no more than 10% of the town's investments shall be invested in a single financial institution, and I think the new wording has 25%.
Where was the 10%? Because the one that's on the current policy doesn't have any percentage. What section are you, is the old one?
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah,
D, diversification.
it's basically about the
in the
fifth
new-
page in, 1, 2,
Is that the old one?
3,
I'm
5,
looking at the
7,
one
9,
online.
page 9.
Oh, it should be the same one I printed.
No, the one online on diversification.
The older one does say 10% and the new one is 25. I mean, I know that all of those percentages are driven by Mass General laws and existing investment policies in municipalities across the Commonwealth. So I mean, if you took issue with the 25%, I wouldn't have a problem dropping it back down to the 10, but I think the 25% policy is probably standard throughout municipalities in Massachusetts. So, I mean, we can check on that if you do have an issue with the 10 versus the 25, but I think that's a standard percentage and a standard policy throughout the Commonwealth.
It was just a point of interest on my part to better understand the difference.
see. This one. Let me find its detail.
Yeah, I think it would be good to probably get clarification on that, or to add a line about whether it's going to be
There's two
consistent with Mass
diversification
General law.
sections.
Or something.
So this is an example of, it's repeated several different times, so it was 10% in one paragraph, not 10% in the other one, so.
Right.
So I would amend my motion to provide that it remain at 10%, and then we ask the town manager to work with the finance director to investigate whether we should change that.
I amend my second.
With those amendments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you for that catch.
Now, you may have missed this. We did talk about Section 305 warrants, and we kind of said that that's more about policy, more a procedure kind of thing than a policy. Does that appear anyplace else? Because it
I don't
seems to
believe
stick
so.
out here.
No, yeah, I don't, it does seem like plopped there.
I assume it's popped there because there's no place else.
Okay, it doesn't bother me, it's just,
Yeah, I think we talked about our policies moving just to be policies and not procedures, and as I said earlier, I said that we might have a policy that we authorize the chair to sign the warrants, and that would be a policy. But we're not at that point.
So you're looking to remove section 3.05?
Well, either remove it or say warrants will be signed by the Board of Selectmen. I mean, you
Which
know,
is Mass General.
which is,
Unless
which
you
really doesn't
adopt,
have to be because that's Mass General law.
Right,
municipal
because, I mean, you
modernization.
can designate one member of the committee to sign off on the warrants, and then they go to the next meeting after that, but it would be a vote of the board to do that.
The procedure part was to allow members of the Board of Selectmen to look at the warrant before the meeting, before we'd be asked to sign it. So I think that's a procedure, not a policy.
and I'm not recommending we change the procedure, I just think it kind of sticks out in the middle of the policies.
So I'd make a motion that we move section 3.05 to some policy, to some procedure section and remove it from the policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, you're all done with us?
I think so.
Great.
The only, I'll still probably trouble over this, and we may discuss this down the road, but it's not necessarily for tonight, is that I did probably want to take a look at the language in the stabilization funds to clarify the purpose of the special purpose stabilization fund. And maybe not, it may just be that I need to take another read of it, just because it does talk about extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures. I got hung up on unforeseen expenditures, and really the purpose of the other stabilization fund is to take it out. So, we can say extraordinary by saying that the purpose of it is to hit, for the capital one anyway, to pay for those capital items, or to help pay for those capital items that are an extraordinary expense, like greater than a lot of money.
Actually, there is one more, the OPEB funding policy,
Oh, okay, yeah.
that the discussion was going to be centered around reduction of OPEB liability and budgeting for any new personnel.
Okay, so,
That is,
307.
so once you took that other whole section out, I just stopped looking. I'm sorry.
Which section is it in?
It's on the very end of the
Financial documents? All
Last section.
yeah, the end of the financial policies.
right, thanks. Jesus.
So this was originally adopted in January?
yes.
Okay. And what are you proposing to change?
Selectman Luck had asked this to be a discussion for funding of new personnel, essentially.
Okay, so when we're talking about the reduction of OPEB liability, I'm not sure what that means. Are we talking about ways to reduce the OPEB liability? Was that
Going
what the
forward.
question was?
Yeah, going forward.
And by what means?
Well, when, at the MMA last year, lots of towns are changing the contracts with personnel to lower liability going forward for the new hires. And there are...
So changing the splits.
They're trying to take an active role in reducing future liability with new hires. And also, when you do make a personnel hire, the total cost of the hire be detailed, not just the salary, but what their benefits are, and all be a complete package, and, the future retirement.
Which we did do. We did make plan changes last year that brought down our OPEB liability by $8 million.
And the other thing is when we did the police and fire additional positions, we had the salary, we had the current fringe benefits, we also, I believe, the future OPEB liability was included in there.
When they did the calculations,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, because
Yeah,
I wasn't
I-
part of that contract.
I think that was some of the discussion was that's what you're looking for, is that if we're going to add another position to our personnel, that we will know what it's going to cost, an estimated cost for current and future liability. Yeah.
And, work at reducing that liability with new hires. I think we need to be proactive. I like that we're working on that already. That's great. It would be nice to have a policy.
So we could have something saying the Board of Selectmen will work to reduce future liability of the town. Pretty open.
See, to me, that's more of a, OPEB is OPEB. It's post-employment benefits. Now, you can have a strategy to negotiate your contracts, change benefits for future hires, understand how much a hire costs before you make the hire, and that affects your hiring strategy. But I'm not sure it's a policy decision, it's more of a strategic decision.
Well, I think the policy would be, we're going to take efforts to try to reduce the, this policy currently said we're going to fund it. Here's how we're going to fund it.
Right.
This would be another section to saying, and the Board of Selectmen will work, and we probably need to include it's our policy. The Board of Selectmen will work to reduce future liability future OPEB liability of the town. And then the strategic plan is how you're going to do it. I wouldn't put there that we're going to restrict future retiree.
No, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't put either, because I think this is a policy and that's a strategy, and it may be 1 year's goal, and it may not be the next year's goal. Another board may determine to reduce expenses in a different direction.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that if we say something open-ended, saying the Board of Selectmen will work to reduce future OPEB liabilities of the town, period. And then every year, what is the Board of Selectmen going to do that? Because this is going to be something that's going to be an issue every single year.
See, but to me, okay, this is a longer philosophical discussion, but OPEB to me isn't a real thing. It's something that rating agencies use to analyze the health of one organization versus another. We pay our post-employment benefits out of operating expenses. So this belongs to the financial policy that says we're gonna fund our OPEB obligation to whatever standard the policy requires.
So I guess the question I have is, do we have a policy regarding the unfunded pension liability?
It's part of our assessment.
So it's part of the assessment. So the Worcester County Retirement Board, and it's not on the cherry sheet, it's that one is where it's unfunded, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay. So we have a process right now of the unfunded pension liability was something similar to this. And the state said, you folks have to do something to deal with this funded going forward.
Right.
We could also have, so that is a funding policy.
Right.
So both here and that one, you could restrict future pension liability by some policy. Restricting pay increases, not hiring a lot of people, that's part of the unfunded.
You could.
So, right.
And if you're suggesting we should, that's a different discussion.
Right,
I guess.
but I see that as a strategic thing to deal with future liabilities. I think we should be holding ourselves to saying we should have on our agenda an effort to reduce future liability of the town. Because I don't think this is unreal, because every year, the current liability is going to be high. I know that this is unrealistic as far as the total liability at the moment, and probably the reality is somebody else is going to solve this, whether it's federal or state government, and it's going to come out of the other pocket, not of the moving from one pocket to the other. It's going to be the third pocket. So I think there's a value to say as a policy that this is the funding, but we also have a policy, and maybe this isn't the place to do it, and maybe we need to put that on a future agenda item.
See, I do want to put it on a future agenda, but our OPEB liability is what it is. We do have a policy to fund it out of free cash as one of our priorities. The strategy to reduce that, to me, is not a policy, it's a strategy. It's part of our, we choose to address that as opposed to addressing something else.
So this probably is not the place to do it, because the title is OPEB funding policy, and the purpose is to establish guidelines for management of the impact of the town's other post-employment liability. Although, the first sentence, policy to establish guidelines for the management of the impact. Part of the manage of the impact could be
it's the impact of the liability.
Right.
Which is a done deal.
Which actually, I think that part of the discussion will have to also include the school committee. Because basically, in terms of if you're writing something to end up being a budget issue, since the town picks up the OPEB liability completely.
What we have funded into the trust funds?
Yes.
Yes, it's been a percentage of our free cash.
except for the teachers.
But that's what I mean. So that's why I'm saying the school commit, that like the school committee budget, if there was a way to incorporate like a line in their budget item to address, because basically this, if you're talking about changing the budgeting process, it would be good to have a discussion with both
Now,
parties.
other post-employment benefits include health insurance, right?
That's correct.
So we do pay the teachers' health insurance in
Right.
retirement.
Right.
So,
Well, that's why I'm saying that, yeah.
I mean, it's not except for the teachers, because the teachers are part of it.
But that, the change that I referenced in the plan change also affected the teachers' insurance. So that therefore it affected the
It affected-
town's
it
overall.
reduced theirs too, yeah.
liability.
I know, but I mean, I just wanted to make sure people know that other post-employment benefits are also awarded to teachers.
Right, and I'm not sure if he might have been talking about pension, because that doesn't.
Right.
That doesn't.
So well, because we're in the meeting, I would make a motion that we have another discussion about OPEB, opportunities to reduce future OPEB liabilities.
I think it's definitely something we need to do.
Yeah.
If this isn't the place to
Yeah,
address it,
I don't
then
think this is it,
that's
because this is
fine.
a funding policy.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Any further discussion? I agree totally, I just,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So no changes to this one.
Okay, then basically, unless you have other stuff that you want to talk to about policies, then we're going to adjourn our meeting now, but Phyllis has.
Can I talk about the budget process a little bit? Can that be part of this discussion or not?
Well, the public hearing starts in 5 minutes.
All right, just quickly. When people bring their budgets to you, it appears to me that's the first time you're seeing them when they're in front of you presenting.
That's not true.
Oh, okay, so how much in advance do you get them?
Not a lot, but basically it's because,
Like a week?
we have the whole budget.
You have a whole week or something to go over their plans, at least?
No, the budget's presented mid-February, so
However long it takes for the first presentation. So, we have time.
I mean, well, I guess then that information should be shared, because when we go to budget hearings, we don't have anything in front of us, we're just sitting there without anything, and it's
But
very
we do.
frustrating.
Because basically we get it when you present it initially, there's a first presentation of the whole budget, before we get into the individual departmental presentations, and that's when we see it, and there's no reason why you can't have a copy.
But why isn't there discussion before it's presented? I mean, because once it's presented, it's accepted, and then everyone says, well, it's the budget, so we can't mess with it, and that's why people end up having to stand up at town meeting floor to get any changes made. I feel like the budget process is too canned.
So part of the budget, I'm trying to pull it up here, the budget process is set out in the charter. So 6.3, the town manager shall submit to the finance committee a proposed operating budget for the ensuing year with an accompanying budget message and supporting documents.
At what time?
It's a certain number of days before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, fixed by bylaw. So, and that's always been done. Then it's also got to go into the, a notice about the budget, summary of it is publicized, and there's a budget message.
Where are the discussions before that's presented, though?
So it is the town manager's budget. In the, prior to town charter, it used to be the finance committee's budget.
You know, I felt like through the whole budget process, at least the Board of Selectmen didn't discuss the budget at all. I kept waiting for the budget discussions, and they never happened.
Well, I think that basically, and what our assumption is as the Finance Committee, is that the Board of Selectmen help to address the priorities of the town prior to the budget coming forward, and that basically we're looking at whether or not the town can address those priorities in the order that the town manager is presenting them, because our assumption is the town manager is presenting a budget based on the priorities she's hearing from the town. So, so there's that part, but basically, when we're hearing it and we're weighing, again, we're coming from a place where there's not enough money to do all of the things that everybody wants to do, and so people are cutting back before they come to us already. So I think mostly when we see it, it's a question of where's the opportunities for up and down discussions, but so I'm not sure if there's something in particular that you're not hearing. We've done it before where we had workshops in advance of the departmental presentations, which were basically departmental presentations around the table before we did the public hearing, but we've never, our sense is that if the Board of Selectmen wants to basically take a crack at looking at last year's budget and saying, you know, like, were our priorities misplaced, I think that would be a fair thing to do.
The charter provides that it is the town manager's budget, not the Board of Selectmen's budget. So we can provide input to the town manager, and then it's the town manager's decision whether to accept that or not from the Board of Selectmen or from anybody else. That's my read of the charter. That's typically done when you have a town manager form of government. It was actually that true when we had a CAFO.
Okay.
But it feels like there need to be discussions before the presentation of the town manager's budget, because it's very rigid.
Well, I think
it's presented.
I think you can do that. I think that, and I think that's fair. And I think that basically, again, I just go back to, I'm assuming that you're discussing the priorities. But not to be really rude, but since I do have a public hearing coming up, and I need to adjourn our meeting, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. And okay, so now we're going to move into the public hearing portion of the meeting, but we need the warrant.
We are not going to adjourn at the moment. One of our agenda items is to discuss the special town meeting warrants and may take votes.
Do we move?
So the way
or do
we
we stay here?
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But what we will do is, when the chair closes the public meeting and begins deliberation, if we want to deliberate on any of the warrant articles, we'll make it known to her. We'll deliberate in public, vote if we choose to. And, okay, so during the public hearing, we'll stay in session, but I don't
There's a couple more ones. Yeah, thank you. How many did you print? 50.
Can you drive this one?
Yes,
recent, right?
yeah, so there's extra copies.
No. But I'll take it, well, no, we'll hold it for the next one, but you won't be here, so I'll take it.
Just give it to you. Am I supposed to print up the attachments too, or no?
You don't, no. Okay.
Do you want a hard copy?
Sure, have a copy.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
You've got,
Yeah, I got one. I don't
George
know.
has one?
George has one.
Okay.
All right. I'm now going to call to order the the meeting of the Finance Committee to go, to have the public hearing on the warrant articles to be presented at the November 13th special town meeting. There are a whole bunch of articles. Basically, we're going to be addressing up to 18 articles, and I'm probably going to take some of them out of order. If I do, I do feel bad. Chief Marino usually has to wait for the planning board, 6 articles, so, you know, like, if that looks like that's going to happen, I'll make sure you go earlier. Then just pick on Adam. And actually, before we start, the other thing I would ask is, has the planning board had public hearings on any of the articles that are, you didn't have one, you had one on the marijuana?
Nope.
You did not, okay.
The public hearing is in 11 days.
11 days, okay. Then basically what I'm going to do is the first several articles are going to be, and they're all up on the screen behind you if you wanted to follow along, is have the town manager take us through what looks like the first 5 articles, and then probably skip right to, actually through the first 8 articles. I guess that's going to be you, except for the Charter Review Committee, so.
Article 1 is annual recurring article at special town meetings, is normally is to do a budget adjustment to the current fiscal year's budget. So it's to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds all sums of money necessary to amend the amounts voted for the town's fiscal 2019 budget. And right now, given the final state aid figures, there was excess revenue in about approximately $162,000. And also for new growth, we don't have our real estate new growth figure certified yet, but the personal property came in approximately $37,000 more than the estimate. So that's a total of $199,227 that we could raise at the special town meeting.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to. What I want to make sure that everybody on the Finance Committee understands is, as we go through the public hearing process, we will finish, and then our options will be to make a recommendation that we'll vote to either recommend approval, we will put it off until the special town meeting if you don't feel you have enough information. So if you don't feel you have enough information, please say so. Or if the opportunity comes up to, you think that money could potentially be moved somewhere, we can make that recommendation, or you can make a motion to that effect as well. So if at any time you're not sure, because we go straight into voting our recommendations after the hearing, please make sure you get my attention if you have a question. It's different down here. It's kind of harder to see everybody, but I just want to make sure that you understand that poke me, because by the end of tonight, in order for any recommendations we might want to make to be in the warrant so people can read the recommendations, we will need to take those votes tonight. Okay, I'm sorry, so Article 1, we're done. Article 2?
Let me go back to Article 1, just
Okay.
for the selectmen who've seen they've seen the draft warrant at a previous meeting. Previously, it included amending the capital plan, the fiscal 19 capital plan. Discussions between the finance director and myself, we're going to wait until the annual town meeting to make those adjustments, because at that point, we will know, we'll have the money in hand from the state that was appropriated in the state budget for the asbestos abatement project, the $130,000. And we would also, we're also considering looking at rescinding the borrowing portion that was funded as part of the capital plan for the ladder truck and pay that with free cash.
Okay.
Good.
Article 2, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds to the special purpose stabilization fund. And that's not a request to use free cash towards that. It would be raise and appropriate monies towards that.
All right, so you're talking about what was identified as the new revenues, or the
Yes.
additional revenues?
Yes.
Okay.
And is that part of the 199,162 you mentioned in Article 1?
Yes. And that, between now and November, we expect the new growth to be certified, so we'll know the real estate number as well by then, we should.
Good.
Article 3 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to fund the first year, the fiscal 19 Lunenburg Laborers International Union Public Employees Local 39 Collective Bargaining Agreement. And that would, it's going to be approximately $10,688. And that would come from, it'd be a transfer from the salary reserve account.
Okay, so when you say about, does that mean it's 688 and 20 cents, or?
The number I have is 687 and 26 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Rounded up by 74 cents, okay, got it.
So what is this agreement?
That's the collective bargaining agreement for the DPW unit employees.
Like salary increases?
Yes.
And again, if at any time anybody has any questions, you may have to actually say something.
Article 4, to see if the town will vote to appropriate all or a portion of the net premium paid to the town upon the sale of the town's $3,685,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2018 bonds dated April 25th, 2018, to pay costs of the capital projects financed by such bonds and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for such projects by a like amount, and/or to reserve all or portion of the net premium to be appropriated for future capital projects. And I'll let the finance director answer any questions on this article.
Is there a dollar amount?
The net premium that we received on the bond, once all the issuance costs were paid, was $104,659.15. And this issue related to Meadowwoods and to the pavement management plan. We actually refunded the bonds for the Meadowwoods. There was no premium. The net premium for that was zero, but this $104,659.15 is the net premium on the pavement management. So what we would be looking to do with this article is rescind the borrowing authorization for the pavement management by $104,659.15, and this would come in as revenue to that fund and offset that borrowing.
Okay.
Sure. Great.
Any questions? No? Article 5. Is that's the sewer committee?
That's a sewer commission. I don't know if anyone's...
We don't have sewer commission, okay.
Is that just moving from one pocket to another?
It's from their free, you want to answer that?
I can
It's
tell you,
their
I
free
mean, I can
cash.
just tell you what it is. These are revenues that they received in their operating budget this year for reserve capacity that were not expended in this year, so they're looking to move that money into their stabilization fund for future expenses. It's an existing stabilization fund that they have right now.
Okay, but they don't have the same, two-thirds vote from the town to get it back out, or they do?
Yes, they do.
They do, okay.
Yeah, majority in, two-thirds out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 6, to see if the town will vote to hear an interim report from the Charter Review Committee or take any other action relative thereto. And that's, I don't know how that's usually handled at town meeting. That's usually just
The
a,
town votes to hear the report, and then the report's read.
okay.
Does that have an impact on our committee?
No,
No direct financial impact.
no, it's not, we're not voting on the charter. It's just basically a progress report. Okay, Article 7.
Okay. To see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 70, entitled Salary Administration Plan, as follows: to amend Chapter 70, Section 17, Section 21, and Section 28, as shown on a document entitled Amendments to the Salary Administration Plan Bylaw, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through therein. And essentially, I can tell you, the changes are to amend the vacation accrual, and as well as the wording within vacation payout to be the first pay period of a new fiscal year instead of the last pay period of the current fiscal year, and as well as a deletion in a definition and a correction that reflects the FMLA town's policy.
John?
Any direct or indirect financial effect?
None that I can think of.
Is it just because you're trying to cover it in the year that it's been accrued, or?
It's, so yes, so the accrual would start right away. A lot of employees who, depending on when they were hired, they may not see their vacation time for a year and a half, potentially. It's the way the wording of the bylaw was. So they would be awarded it on the July 1st after their hire date, based on a accrual method.
Article 8.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds the sum of money to fund a salary survey for positions within the salary administration plan. And this is within the salary administration bylaw. There is a clause that a review needs to be done every 3 years by the Personnel Committee. So we have met and discussed a scope of work, received quotes, and without doing a very comprehensive review, that would include review of all position descriptions and to that nature. If it were just strictly a salary survey, the estimated cost is around $5,000. I have a meeting with the Personnel Committee on Wednesday to discuss a company that is willing to take us on as a pilot, and they would do it free of charge.
Wow.
So we may be able to table this article.
I don't know, I think you should leave it. It would be nice to be able to present zero. We're looking for zero.
Appropriate zero.
Yeah.
So would this study be taking a look at salaries to see how competitive the town is?
Yes, so they would take comparable towns and survey all those positions and see how they land on our comp and classification schedule.
Dave?
Is this mic happening?
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry. Actually, I should also say, if anybody in the public has a question during the hearing, make yourself.
Just a very simple question. Dave Passes, 56 Whiting Street. That particular article, do you have an intended source of the funds?
If it were to come out of an appropriation, it would be the salary reserve.
Okay.
Article 9, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg by adding a new chapter titled Noise Control as shown on the document entitled Noise Control Bylaw. Chief Marino, did you want to address that, or is there anything to?
Sure. It's a document that describes conduct and activities.
Sorry.
For the public.
So that,
It's all about noise control.
this document is a document that prescribes activities and conduct that people would reasonably believe is disruptive and infringes upon their right to be undisturbed. We have no such bylaw.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The speakers in here are on.
What's that?
The speakers aren't on, so you have to speak to the room as well.
Okay. This is a noise control bylaw that prescribes activities and conduct that a reasonable person, or that people would find to be unreasonably disruptive or might infringe upon their right to be undisturbed. Can you hear me? We don't have any such control over noise in this town, except by statute, by the Disturbing the Peace statute. There's other laws concerning the noise that comes out of motor vehicles that we can enforce. But what this bylaw does is it gives us the right to enforce other sources of noise. It prescribes noise levels, all within the DEP guidelines. It also gives the right to the town to issue special permits for occasions that where people might be creating noise that they otherwise wouldn't make. Some examples of that might be somebody wants to have a band at the house and it's going to make noise and they feel that the neighbors might be disturbed by that. They probably have to come in and ask for a permit to do so. If that happens, the police would be able to enforce the law by using noise level detection. So that it's essentially a response to a community that has grown dramatically over the past several years. I mean, in this community today, I mean, if you drive around town, houses are a lot closer to each other. There's a lot more density than there ever was. So that's what really prompts the need for updating our laws. And again, without a bylaw such as this, we have very little power to enforce noise violations. They are, noise violations there are state guidelines with respect to noise violations that are enforced by the DEP, but that's by application. It typically involves commercial applications. Somebody's going to put up a windmill and, it makes that swooping noise or something to that effect. Or, in this case, it gives us, as a town, the right to enforce, with respect to commercial growth, say, an example of that would be, say, a huge factory wants to put in a huge trash compactor. The bylaw says, yeah, you can do that and you can make all the noise you want as long as it's not between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So if say this commercial entity is close to residential area and the neighbors complain, it gives us some authority to resolve the issue. So that's essentially what this is all about. The town council and I have worked on it. It's not something that we designed. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We stole it from another town and then obviously made some adjustments to it that would, that would conform with the landscape here in Lunenburg.
Chief, will the noise bylaw be available for people to look at prior to town meeting?
I would make it available.
I mean, is it on the website or something? Because there's a lot of reading to do, to
It
look it
will
over.
be. It will also be on file at the town clerk's office and the selectman's office, but we can put it on the website.
Oh, that'd be great if you could put it on the website. Thank you.
Yes, through,
Ask a question?
Yeah, you have to come up to the mic and identify yourself, please, and your address.
Quick question. I'm Judith Ernst, 568 Flat Hill Road, and I'm wondering if the bylaw would include individuals riding their small motorcycles on their property? I forget the proper name for those.
it can, yes.
Okay.
It can. But again, it outlines when you can do that. So there are time limits where certain noises are allowed and when they're not allowed. And it's typically 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's just like a chainsaw. If you fired up a chainsaw at 2 o'clock in the morning, just similar to a motorcycle engine, at least the police would be able to go there and ask the person to knock it off or else.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking outside of those hours. I'm talking outside of those hours.
Outside of those-
Daytime hours.
Right, if it's reasonable. Yeah.
It's not my house.
I've got one question. I know we started looking at this at the selectmen's meeting earlier, and I still have a question. I'm not asking you to answer this, but as far as the start and end date, the 6 a.m. versus 7 a.m. time, we want to have some discussion on that, so. Okay. I think that part was, and I think that's why it needs to be on the website, so that everybody gets to look at it to see what the town wants for the time, starting time in the morning.
Okay, I think you asked that question the last time we met, and that was at the suggestion of town council, that to set those hours because they're in line with the DEP's hours with respect to noise pollution. And I guess it's deemed to be a little more reasonable than others. That is 7 p.m., which is, people feel is, I mean, we're up work and landscapers are already out cutting lawns and so on and so forth. And, you know, where it might affect commerce and it might be challenged. And that was the concern. But anyways, that's, and I'm sure town council would speak to that as well at town meeting if the question comes up.
Would this bylaw, would this apply to registered motor vehicles, like trucks with engine brakes and?
Those, not Chapter 90, Section 16 covers that. That's a motor vehicle law. Unreasonable, excessive and unreasonable noise is covered by that. So, yes, there are some other statutes that cover certain noises, but this is kind of this kind of covers more residential, commercial, those kinds of noise pollution. So,
Thank you, Chief.
So fast.
I was a little bit concerned that, you know, the chief of police said steel. You stole it.
The bylaw from somewhere.
You stole the bylaw. You're on TV, you know. Okay, I'm sorry. Article...
He did it quietly.
He did do it, yes. He did do it very quietly. Yeah. Article 10.
This is to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 12, entitled Americans with Disabilities Committee, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through, with copies to be at the town clerk's office and the selectmen, and we can put on the website. So the selectmen, we discussed this at the last meeting, discussed the, looking at our bylaw, what would be the advantages of going to adopting Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, which is establishing a commission on disability. But after speaking with the Massachusetts Office on Disability, because we have an established bylaw, what I would recommend is that we mirror the provisions similar to what a commission on disability would do without, you know, adopting that section of law. And this would change the composition to be similar to what a commission on disability would be, where a majority of the members are persons with disabilities, where our current bylaw is they're the minority on the committee. And other stipulations outlining a little more detail about their powers and duties and.
How big would the committee be?
Five people still, so it's currently 5 as well.
Okay, so there's no, at this point, there
No,
would be no
there's-
financial impact
No.
to doing that? Okay. Any questions? No questions, okay. Article 11? Oh, this is a historical commission? Oh, it's Adam already.
Well, we're at the back end of the warrant, so it's got to be me. Excuse me. This is not my article. I was approached this morning by the Historical Commission, so I understand what this is about. Chapter 134-4D is the demolition delay bylaw, and that section is the section which prescribes a 180-day delay on demolition of structures 75 years or older within the town of Lunenburg. Apparently, Mass Historical recently, within the last year or two, has started advocating for an 18-month delay instead of a 6-month delay, which is where the 540 days comes from. So the Historical Commission's looking to amend our local demolition delay bylaw to make the delay an 18-month delay rather than a 6-month delay. I know that they have some more substantial changes that they would like to bring forward in the future, probably at the annual town meeting, but they felt that this was an important one to get on for the special town meeting this fall.
Mr. Passios.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Knowing some of the situations that have come up over the past year or two in regards to the 6-month delay, I will be working adamantly against this change. It handcuffs the town's ability to move forward. I understand trying to protect historical buildings, but within that 6-month period, there are stipulations set by the commission to prove that the building is either not saleable or rehabable or whatever, and tying the town's hands for 18 months is unrealistic. During the campaign back in the spring, I actually came across a YouTube video of, I believe it was a selectman's race in a city down near Boston, and one of the questions came up to the present incumbent mayor at the time as to why the redevelopment of the downtown area was going so slowly. And he came right out and said that the historical constraints are killing us. Thank you.
Questions? Oh.
Question for Adam. Have they just been advocating for the 18 months, or is there actually going to be a precedent that's enforceable by the state? I thought that's where the 6 months came from.
I had about a 5-minute conversation about it, so I can't give you a lot of information, unfortunately. I don't have a lot of information. I figured that since you're doing this, I could at least give you the quick and dirty of it rather than have it either passed over or not have any information. But I would suggest reaching out to the chair of the Historical Commission. She's the one I spoke to this morning.
Yeah, I asked because I thought from way back when I was on Historic Commission, I thought it was 6 months because that was kind of a statewide precedent.
Yeah, and I think the state is changing their tune on that, and I think that some of it has to do with, 6 months is a pretty quick period of time. From a sale of real estate point of view, I understand Mr. Passios' point. I don't necessarily disagree with it in certain instances. I think from my conversation, it sounds like the Historical Commission is looking to take a more active role in the delay period to facilitate reuse, movement, or reoccupation of the building as opposed to demolition. But again, this is as new to me as it is to you guys right now. So I'm really just trying to get the conversation going.
Will the Historical Commission make a presentation at town meeting?
I sure hope so.
This is an example of an article that just came in, and it'll be my recommendation when we take our votes that we not take a position because we need to hear the information.
Right. I agree.
Okay, then we can move you right along to Article 12, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg to modify Section 250-8.3.c1 by inserting the number 9. I'll let you just speak.
It's a little more self-explanatory when you get into the text of it. So Section 258.3 is the
protective bylaw.
It's the protective bylaw, and it's the procedures of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Specifically, Section C is in regards to special permits, their guidelines. What the proposal is to add a reference to the statute, which would be the number 9, which is Section 9 of Chapter 40A. What Section 9 of Chapter 40A does is provide timelines for the procedure of special permits. Specifically, there's a 65-day window to hold or to open a public hearing upon the filing of an application. There's no prescribed timeline for the length of that hearing. At the close of the hearing, the special permit granting authority has 90 days with which to issue or to render a decision. And from the rendering of the decision, there's a 14-day timeline with which to file said written decision with the town clerk. Our bylaw in Section 3 of 258.3C outlines a 90-day hard window from the filing of application to the rendering of decision. So if, for some reason, we were to avail ourselves of the 65-day window to open the public hearing, we would have 25 days to make a decision. So what the planning board is proposing, and the zoning board has signed on with, and town council is in support of, is removing our self-imposed 90-day time limit from the receipt of application to the rendering of decision and reverting to following the state statute, which, to my knowledge, the majority of other communities within Massachusetts follow. This was proposed at the annual town meeting. There were some town meeting members who felt this would be an impediment to economic development and could cause infinitely long hearings and boards choosing to continue and continue and continue without ever rendering a decision. Ultimately, that's just not a realistic effect. I can't say it would never happen. I can't say that no town has ever done it, but boards want stuff to move through. If they're going to deny it, they're going to deny it. If they're going to approve it, they're going to approve it. What this window does is creates a situation where an applicant who fears that they may get a negative decision may delay and delay, either hoping to miss, the town will miss this deadline, or force a denial and, have resultant litigation.
Questions?
Is it possible to say the time frame from the application to decision with the proposed change? Is that something that can be said? I know that there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but...
It really isn't, because it's determined on application.
Yeah.
I would say on average, probably 80% of the special permit applications that go to the zoning board are heard within, I'll even say 45 days, because it's a minimum of 21 days, because we have to advertise 7 and 14 days prior to the hearing. So you needed at least 21 days. Sometimes, very rarely, the zoning board will have 3 or 4 hearings and they'll push someone off to their next meeting. Most of those are finished in one night with the zoning board. And then once they issue that decision, they have 14 days. So, you're probably talking, people come in and I say, best case scenario, you're 60 to 90 days from filing to walking out with a decision that you can go get a building permit with. Oftentimes stuff that the planning board sees for special permits is a little more complicated. It tends to be a little grander, I guess, in scale. There can be a lot of plan changes. Some of it is determined on the applicant. Some applicants are just Johnny on the spot, their engineers are, ready to go. They continue for 2 weeks and they're back there with the plans all ready to go. And some of them you say, oh, well, they'll say, we'll come back in a month. And a month later, they're like, oh, we didn't get to it. And so, 60 to 90 days is what I tell people. I think 120 days is like the long average. But obviously they could go on much longer than that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Passio.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street again. As a previous speaker mentioned, this was already voted down once in a different form at town meeting, and bringing it back time after time after time until it gets passed, I think is inappropriate. Thank you.
Okay, on to Article 13. To see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg to modify by inserting the words "a home occupation" per section 250-4.2 of the protected bylaw regarding signs.
So, section 250.6.5 is the sign bylaw within the protective bylaw. Within this, the planning board is looking to make 2 minor amendments. One is adding home businesses to the signs allowed in residential districts under very limited provisions. They have very tight size requirements, but where we have almost 500 businesses registered in the community, I would say more than 300 of those are probably home businesses of some manner. Some of those folks may wish to have a small sign. I think it's about 6 square feet that's allowed, which would be 2 by 3, which is only slightly larger than this podium's top. And so this would allow unlit signs to be placed on a street frontage to advertise a home business, again, under the remaining provisions of the bylaw. The other section is section F of that same subsection, and this is a proposal to allow for businesses within the commercial district only to install signs that are non-illuminated and 12 square feet or smaller without the need for site plan approval. Currently, any business that installs a sign has to go to the planning board and get site plan approval. Now, if you're building a new business, that's not a big deal. We have a number of storefronts, small structures throughout town that are located in the commercial district that don't currently have signs and could be occupied for business. This would allow someone to occupy one of those structures, install a sign without the need for spending the funds to go to the planning board and do site plan approval, but the sign would not be illuminated and it would be smaller than would be allowed if they were to do site plan approval. It's a way to allow businesses to have a sign if they wish, without going through the bureaucracy and expense of site plan approval, but not in a way that would jeopardize or potentially create a hazardous situation.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So a sign not exceeding 12 feet, is that only in commercial?
Correct.
So it's
Only in the commercial districts.
Okay. And the 25-foot setback is only in commercial?
That's for that single provision. That's for the signs that are installed under that provision, so that would only be in the commercial district.
Because that seems pretty far back for a 25-foot setback of minimum for a sign.
Current setback is 20 feet.
Okay. Yeah. I'll be waiting until town meeting to discuss this too.
And I certainly there's the opportunity to make it match the existing setback, which is 20 feet.
No other questions?
So the next 2 articles are linked in a general sense. So section 250-2.1 is the definition sections of the protective bylaw. At the annual town meeting in May, the planning board proposed and had passed a use table. In preparing that use table, there were some duplicative definitions within section 2.1. So this article looks to delete those definitions from 2.1 as those terms are defined in section 254.1.
Okay, so Article 15 and 14 both go to the definitions.
Correct. And well, now Article 14 is slightly, is tied in some ways and not in other ways. And then 15. 15 is the use table. There were 2 letters that were left out of the use table, which create important distinctions within the use table. Both 2-family and single-family homes in the Village Center District are by special permit through the zoning board. Inadvertently, the Z was left off within both of those boxes, so this is replacing that Z. But it is also striking note 3, which is a note noting that the definitions within 4.1 take precedent and override those that were in 2.1 that were duplicative.
And by deleting the definitions, are they showing up somewhere else?
They're already in section 4.1 under the different terms as they show in the use table. I saved you the 25 or 30 pages of additional definitions.
Thank you, I do appreciate it.
Heather told me I couldn't afford to print them anyway.
All right, so Article 16 is to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg to modify Section 250-4.15 by deleting November 30th and inserting May 31st, and this has to do with a temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana.
That's correct, and to be clear, it's deleting November 30th, 2018, and inserting May 31st, 2019. So in preparing to bring recreational or non-medical marijuana to town meeting for final codification within zoning, the planning board decided they wanted to take a bifurcated approach. They want to offer the town, the people of town, the opportunity to choose whether they prohibit or regulate marijuana. In order to prohibit marijuana in the town of Lunenburg, because we were a yes community on question 4, there's a 2-tiered approach. There needs to be a ballot measure on a local ballot and a bylaw passed at town meeting. Over the summer, the planning board began discussions and preparing to do this at the special town meeting only to find out that since November is a statewide ballot, we cannot place local initiatives such as marijuana prohibition on that ballot. The planning board felt that it was important that there not be a gray area or a term where something is passed and someone could do something that is ultimately then prohibited. For example, if they brought the prohibition and regulation bylaws to special town meeting, even if the prohibition bylaw passed, it could not be effectively enforced until the ballot initiative was passed. So there would be a period between November and May in which someone could potentially open a marijuana business, and then that opens the door to, we have a marijuana business, what's the prohibition, is it a true vote, those kind of things. So the board felt it was important to extend the moratorium into May, to offer in May at town meeting a prohibition option and a regulatory option, which would identify time, place, and manner of which non-medical marijuana businesses could be permitted. If the prohibition passes, they would push for the regulation to pass as well, and then at the ballot in mid-May, if prohibition passes, they would come back at special town meeting in the fall and delete the regulatory bylaw as the prohibition would take precedent.
Okay.
It's not the first time I've had to say that.
Yes, yes.
Just a procedural question in regards to that.
Is there a maximum time limit between the town meeting and a ballot? In other words, number of days between it being accepted at the special town meeting and the required ballot.
Are you speaking to the prohibition? You know, I'm not sure if there is a maximum number of days. Where the planning board has not put it on there, I don't know that it is effective now, but in May, it'll be 14 days between town meeting and the ballot. Their concern was less with legal distance between the two and more with the potential of both passing and or neither passing, and then having this open period where people could just come and kind of do as they wish.
I only raise that question because if you do a 2.5 override, there is a limit. Thank you.
Okay, and then I would also just follow that with, and you do anticipate having an public hearing related to that in particular in 11 days?
The moratorium?
To the moratorium.
Yes, all of the 5 articles placed by the planning board will be adjudicated at a public hearing on October 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The only other point I'd make is that you only have to have an election if you're going to try to prohibit
Correct.
marijuana. The fact is, right
Any
now,
or all.
you could technically have an article to regulate the use and sale of.
Correct.
Without having to have a ballot.
That's correct.
The
issue is the planning board didn't want to do one without the other. They felt that they should not be determining, and they should leave it to town meeting and the voters to determine which path the town takes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Then we are moving right along, and we are at Article 17, which is to see if the town will vote to amend the town bylaws by adding a bylaw for the reduction of plastic bags as follows. And I'm going to ask if there's someone here to speak to the warrant article. Come on up, and again, please introduce yourself again. And going through the article, so the purpose and intent is the production and use of thin film, single-use plastic checkout bags have significant impacts on the environment, and this is to address that. And I'm going to assume it's limited in scope to eliminate the usage of thin film, single-use plastic bags by all retail and grocery stores in the town of Lunenburg.
Judith Ernst, 568 Flat Hill Road.
Okay. All right. So, do you want to go ahead and just discuss the purpose of the,
I can just read it.
Sure.
Purpose and intent, the production and use of thin film single-use plastic checkout bags have significant impacts on the environment, including but not limited to contributing to the potential death of marine animals through ingestion and entanglement, contributing to pollution of the land environment, creating a burden to solid waste collection and recycling facilities, clogging storm drainage systems, and requiring the use of millions of barrels of crude oil nationally for their manufacture. Just to be clear, I brought a bag with me. These are the bags, the ones with the handles at the shopping supermarkets. The ones that don't have the handles, that we put our produce in, that the farmers market uses, the orchards use for their apples, these are not affected. Dry cleaning, not affected. Newspaper bags, not affected.
Is there a reason why one would be affected and the other not?
Well, it's my understanding that that there needs to be, by health regulations, I think stores have to provide some sort of bag for produces. Outside of convenience, there is no reason to put a plastic bag full of peppers into yet another plastic bag.
Okay, and then basically...
The main problem with these bags, if I just may say,
Sure.
is that they don't biodegrade. They don't break down. They fragment, what it's called, over hundreds of years. And even those teensy-weensy particles end up either animals accidentally digest it or even can get into the water. We might drink it, we may have those little particles in our system as we speak.
Any questions?
I have one question. Have you talked with Hannaford and Walmart?
I have talked to Hannaford, yes. I actually was in contact with CEO Mike Vail, and he's in full support. I could not talk to Walmart. I tried to, I did, whoever was on site, and I explained. They really didn't quite understand, and they kept telling me to write. I emailed, but not heard back. I did the same with Target and Market Basket, even though they're not in town.
Oh, if I could follow up with that, how do they plan to support it? They'll have to take the bags away, but are they going to give anything in replacement of that, or are people going to have to bring their own bags? And
Yeah, bring your own bags. If I may emphasize that.
sure.
If I may emphasize that a cloth bag costs maybe 50 cents and lasts for a decade or 15 years. I've had them in my car for as long and not had to replace them.
Yeah, yeah.
Another comment I got from people is that they use it as a lining for bathroom trash bags. I think people, if they really feel a need to line their bathroom trash bags, they can purchase a bag for that reason, for the purpose.
It's definitely a great idea. I'm more concerned about the people that show up that aren't aware that this is happening and what their recourse will be when they go to buy groceries and don't have a bag.
And they do have paper
Well, that's
bags.
what I'm getting at, as long as that's the case.
Right now, you can request paper bags and not take the plastic.
All right.
And also this is, I think I put as June 1st, so there's a half a year to make the adjustment.
And there are stores that, in jurisdictions where they don't have plastic bags, they have all the cloth bags for sale at the checkout as well.
And I actually talked to local small businesses, convenience stores, and they would be happy to let go of the burden of having to purchase these bags. The ones I talked to.
Is there a reason why then we're going to a bylaw and not just a movement to encourage the stores to not use them?
I am afraid that change will not happen as quickly. There's no time. I think we're overdue on this.
Oh, there's no question that there's too much plastic out there, in my mind. But I also was just wondering if there's a need for a bylaw, or if Hannaford is willing to say, yeah, I don't want to provide plastic bags anymore.
They won't do it. That was back in May, I think. But actually, Hannaford's was the first supermarket that started using the reusable cloth bags. I think people are still, from what I hear and read, are very, very, very for convenience society.
Okay.
So.
I have a question, maybe more for Heather. How does the town implement this in terms of notifications? I mean, not just Walmart and Hannaford, but a smaller hardware store where it may not be expected that they have alternative bags. How does the town, and maybe how do they implement the information, and how does it get spread, and who spreads the information? Because there's obviously got to be some work by the town at somebody's time and expense to go out and make sure, if it's a bylaw, that it's happening. Or, I mean, they must get letters, and how do we know who uses bags? I guess I have a lot of procedural questions. And then one thing I'll point out is it says single-use plastic bags, and I was down on the Cape this summer and I got this really incredible bag when I left CVS, and I was like, wow, and it said this bag is reusable. But it was just a nice plastic bag. So I don't know if some companies have become creative to almost even circumvent this type of process, because this plastic bag I had was really nice and it said, this is not a single-use plastic bag, please reuse. So
It was probably a thicker.
It was, yeah.
So this describes 2.5 mils or less in the description, so. I guess the question I would have following up on that is that the listing of our common victular licenses, or how do we regulate retail stores that are not a grocery store? So I think I would say it's less for Heather, but it's the proponent of the applicant, of the article, to identify the stores in town that would be affected, because people at town meeting would want to know that. So Hannaford and Walmart are easy, but Aubuchon, that type of a store, anything else that people go in and get that, people at town meeting want it. It really is not the job of the town manager to do it before town meeting, but once it became our bylaw, then it would be our responsibility.
I can maybe share a little bit. In Switzerland, we had the same discussion about 6 years ago, and the trend which happened is pretty much a shop which gives away plastic bag needs to have a license. And a plastic bag needs to be reusable and is charged about 25 cents a bag. There's also more expensive one, which are reusable one, but that's the way how they enforced it on a per town basis. Because if you want to hand out plastic bags, you need a small license, and it's very cheap. It's like 25 bucks, something like this a year. But with that, you also pretty much get the whole education, what it is about, what your options are, and what your obligations are. And against all odds, people really accepted that very quickly. And since the shops charge 25%, the usage of single-use bags went down by 85%. Just from 0 to 25 cents, that made such a difference. And that's maybe something you want to keep a bit in mind.
That's fantastic.
I was actually on vacation at North Beach, Maine last summer. The Hanfords up there, they don't issue plastic bags, it's all heavy-duty paper.
Okay. No other question? Okay, well, very good.
Just so that I'm clear, am I requested to make a list of small businesses?
Actually, that was a political comment, that in order for people at the town meeting to feel comfortable, they would want to know that what are the businesses in towns that are affected, and ideally, you'd want to talk to them before you go into town meeting.
Okay.
To say, because the hearing Hannaford saying they would support it is important to me to know what the businesses in town.
Fair enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was Article 17. So Article 18, to see if the town will vote to transfer its right, title, and interest to the land at 174 Northfield Road rear, shown on the Assessor's Map 41, Block 3, Lot D, from the Board of Selectmen, for which said property is held, to convey all of such property to Deborah St. Vrain on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Board of Selectmen deems appropriate. And this is a citizen's petition. Do we have the citizen to speak to it? Please come up, introduce yourself, and
Deborah St. Vrain, 6 Iris Court at the Woodlands. Do you want me to, I don't know if you're going to ask me questions, or would you like me to read what I have supplied you with already?
I'm going to say that this is something that maybe you'd want to know how best to handle it, because we don't.
Why don't you tell us what the gist of the article is?
Okay. Well, before I do that, I'm going to hand out a couple of other things I'd like to add to what I've given you already. The first is the approval from the lake. There's a few copies there. The approval from the lake for use of the land for my dock, and then some additional pictures so that you can sort of visualize the property, my property and the abutting property. So basically, there's a parcel behind my exclusive use area at the Woodlands that is owner unknown and has been. I've used this piece of property for 19 years, almost 19 years. I'm in my 19th year now. And when my husband and I bought the property in 2000, the developer told us that it was part of the exclusive use easement. And that didn't really suffice for us. We went to the town hall and looked at maps also, because we learned the hard way that with buying another piece of property in another town, that all the information is not necessarily forthcoming. So we went to the town hall and looked at maps, and this parcel was not on maps at that time. Otherwise, we probably would not have bought the property. We could have bought two other lots that are right next to us, or we could have bought elsewhere. We could have made other decisions. But we thought we were good to go, and so we did. And everything rocked along fine, pretty much the first 9 years. Then a neighbor happened to be studying maps at the town for his own personal reasons, and came over one day and said, "Did you know there's this little piece of property back here, you know?" And it was news to everyone, and we started to look into it, but my husband got ill right at that time. So we sort of had to drop that. And then in 2014, I tried to begin that process again, and I lost my husband in 2010. And in 2014, I tried on my own to do that again, but pretty much was discouraged by everyone involved then. I was not offered a process like I've been offered here now. And had I been offered that, probably I would have dealt with that in 2014, but I wasn't. So here I am today. And I have some people here that have been nice to come along, because I do live in the Woodlands. It's exclusive use. Bob is a trustee. Bob Pease is a trustee. If you have any questions for him, he could answer that. And again, I do live on Hickory Hills Lake, so if you have any lake questions, Joan Pease is here because she's on the board of the lake also. So.
I'm here in my capacity as an officer of the Hickory Hills Landowners Board of Directors, and we had a meeting last night, and they asked me to convey a written statement to you. At the October 10th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Directors for the Hickory Hills Landowners Corporation, the following motion was unanimously approved. The Hickory Hills Landowners Board of Directors have no objection to the town of Lunenburg conveying the parcel of land known as 174 Northfield Road Rear to Debbie St. Vrain's ownership. Joan Pease, the clerk and officer of Hickory Hills Board of Directors, is empowered to convey this information to the Selectmen, Town Manager, and Finance Committee. This is probably because, you know, there was an additional warrant last year for the Lake Hickory Hills landowners to gain this, and they now feel that they don't need to do that this would be good for Deborah St. Vrain to do.
So there was a previous warrant article that passed?
That failed. That was withdrawn.
That was passed over, okay.
Passed over, was withdrawn.
Okay.
So this is town-owned land that's basically landlocked?
Tiny, yeah, it's a tiny triangle.
0.08 acres. And I don't know if you're looking at that picture, but my exclusive use envelope pretty much ends just somewhere in those bushes back there, so it's sort of my waterfront area.
There's no street access. It is
There's no
a
street.
landlocked piece of land that abuts the water.
And it's owned by the town?
Tiny, 0.08 acres.
And it's owned by the town?
It is owned by the town. Okay, Mr. Passios.
Yeah, my only question is how did the town come by owning it if it was listed as ownership unknown? How does the town legally have jurisdiction over that land if it was owner unknown?
So the owner unknowns that's being referred to is the way the assessors refer to it. So the question becomes, is there some taking by the tax collector through land of low value? Because the assessors have it assessed as $100. It's about 3,300 square feet. So the question that I would have is this the town's property because it was taken under the land of low value at some point? That would be-
My only concern is that we can't, the town of Lunenburg cannot convey land that does not legally and improve homes. That's my own question, otherwise, I have a question at all.
So some of this may be a title thing that needs to get resolved
Yes, I-
before town meeting as far as showing that it's actually owned by the town so we can actually be conveyed out.
Right, but I understand the process is the town meeting approval first and then the title search. Is that right?
Yes.
Because there is a procurement process for disposition of town
Right,
land.
this is not the
Yeah,
end of the story
I
by what
guess
happens
that's-
at town meeting.
I guess that's my other question, and it's all process related. I don't necessarily object to what they're trying to accomplish, but if and when it's determined that the town owns it, what is the procurement process for us to dispose of it? And can we dispose of it to Deborah St. Vrain and Deborah St. Vrain only? Or does it have to go to bid or do some other kind of
I agree that I would
gyration?
have procurement questions just based on having researched it, if you can specifically give it to one person, or if it would have to go out to bid, or else you have to go through the process of all those exceptions, similar to some things with the Gilchrist Path. There's a lot with Section 16, Chapter 40B.
It might not be that simple, just because, or it might be more simple than that, just because it's not accessible. It's not otherwise accessible.
It goes, it's the value of the...
Value, and if it's less than $35,000 in value, is that's where it triggers the.
Yeah, triggers 40B, yeah.
And by conveying it, would we be, applying a price as, selling?
The value of it,
You transfer it for the value of the property.
In terms of what if somebody else wanted the bid, are there any other butters, things like that?
it wouldn't require it necessarily.
Okay. So obviously, more discussion again.
Right, but that sounds like it's on the town side, just to make sure that the town is set with it, so.
I think in order to help the citizen who's trying to get this accomplished, I'm not sure it should be at the expense of the town, but I think there should be a way for us to say, if we own it and if we can transfer it, does the town want us to do it?
Right,
You know what I mean?
the reality is, we need to know that it's our property, because somebody thinks it's our property. So how, the assessor's listed as owners unknown.
Has the town been writing off taxes on this property? Who's been paying the taxes on this
So-
property? To me, the town is just,
When it's owners unknown, you don't assess the property.
and so
So
the
there are
town
no
would
taxes.
stand to gain taxes paid on the property
Right,
if this would happen.
right.
It doesn't make sense really to just let these little things lie if it doesn't have to me, but I don't understand.
Oh, yeah, I think that part sounds fine. I think that basically it's just getting the legal stuff down so that there's not a problem with the conveyance.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be dealing with it again in 8 years, so, yeah.
Because the town meeting cannot take action on property that the town doesn't own, so we need to know that the town actually owns it. So the question becomes, what we have record to say that we actually own it? And if it's been not assessed because it's owners unknown, you don't do it because, was it part of the lake? Was, that type of thing, and then it wasn't flooded the way they expected, that type of thing. So the question becomes, before I know I could vote to recommend the article, I'd need to know that we actually have the legal authority to do that. So I don't know.
So wouldn't that may require an expense on behalf of the town to do that complete title search?
Well, the issue becomes, I don't think there would be a title search if the town took no action to take the property, because the town doesn't own it. So then it becomes somebody going to land court declaring the property available. I don't, this is part of the law that I don't understand, but you're right that the fact is, you may get to enjoy it because nobody owns it. Because if we don't own it, there's not going to be a procurement disposition process where we can do that, so.
Right, but I think the point will come that the day she wants to sell it.
No,
Or
right, but
pass-
she won't be able to sell it.
Right.
Not that piece, right?
Nobody owns
Right,
it.
but she's probably going to want to because it's waterfront.
But we can't
Yeah.
deed it to her if
Right.
we don't know it. So the question becomes, if we have records in the tax collector's office saying we took it, then it would already say Town of Lunenburg. So I can anticipate to say that nobody did some land of low value taking.
And I'm looking at the GIS map, and there's more than one abutter, so if we did own it, I would feel really uncomfortable conveying anything to one specific person without putting it up to bid, because if I was another abutter, I'd certainly want the opportunity to purchase waterfront.
You're talking about the Montori property. There's only one other abutter on the Montori property, and they do have waterfront.
Or they may want to add to their waterfront. I just don't know as a town if you can convey to one resident.
Town meeting would give that authorization, I believe.
When it's under a certain value, the town meeting has authority to do some stuff. Whether we want to do it is a different question.
I guess that's what I'm saying, is I don't know if I'd feel comfortable.
So
Not even-
I would say you may need to spend a little money to find out what the title of the property is. You know, talk to the tax collector first to find out if we actually did some action at some point.
Okay, so you don't know that a title search would have to be done to know if you own it, the town owns it?
Or if somebody else owns it.
Yeah.
I understand if somebody else owns it. I
Right.
guess I just understood that the town already knew they owned it, because they were dealing with it. Okay, so would the title search need to be done before town meeting? Is that what you're saying?
If the article is amended to, or written to state that if,
Well, right now it says to transfer its right title and interest, and if it had no interest and we took a vote, we could legally take the vote, but we don't have any interest and your title wouldn't be clear. So that's part of the issue, is that we could deed you anything we owned in that property, which would be one thing, but that doesn't necessarily give you clear title.
so is there a way to state the article to hit the, if it does get approved at town meeting, if the town determines that it can take action, they can't take a vote until the town knows they can take action?
The way it's written now, it says it's
It's fine.
transferring its right and title. So
Okay.
whatever the town owns, we can give out, and if we don't own anything by doing the deed, we can still do it, but it doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
So it's not useful to you to actually have this on the warrant if it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So that's where,
And yet, if she finds out, I'm just thinking out loud here, if she finds out that we do have interest, she will have already crossed that.
Right, right.
If it turns out that Joe Jones has interest, she can go deal with Joe Jones and we have nothing to do with it.
Right.
Right? I guess my question is there any harm in us putting this before the citizens and saying,
Well, I mean,
if it turns out,
It's a citizen's petition, so you have to.
It's going to
keep
be
it on the
before the,
warrant.
anyways, it's, you know, so, I mean, I'll be making a motion to not take a position tonight, wait till town meeting, but it's already on the warrant. But to help the petitioner, the fact is that you want to have clear title if you actually get this, so it's to your benefit to know whether it's actually the town property.
Mr. Pease?
My name is Bob Pease. I live at 11 Winter Green Court. I'm a trustee and officer of the Woodlands Village and Hickory Hills Lake Condominium Trust. All 5 of the Woodlands trustees have signed Deborah's petition in our support of Debbie St. Brain's request to acquire the parcel of land known as 174 Northfield Rear. We have it on our executive session agenda to take a formal vote endorsing this land conveyance at our October 25th trustee meeting. I foresee it passing successfully at that time.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering out loud, could this person get the relief she's asking for under like some kind of squatter's rights?
So that's traditionally 21 years.
Yeah, I don't know what it, I think it's
And
around 20 years.
it's against a property owner, but it can never be against the town.
Okay.
So if the town does own it, nobody can have squatters' rights and encroachment on town property. The town's already assumed, always had to have that right. So the answer is, yeah, if she continues to act like the owner for 2 more years.
Yeah, it says 20 here.
Yeah.
It's
the
definitely
other-
21 years in Massachusetts. I
Well,
know it's every
I
state's a
think
little
George looked up,
different.
it's 20. I think they always say 21, so you get beyond what the number of years.
Yeah, I just did a Google search.
Okay, yeah, I know it's different state by state for adverse
The
possession.
other thing I think would be helpful for the town manager, just to give us, the outline of what the procurement process would be if it was something that we would do, so we would understand what we do and don't have a right to do.
I have a question. If you look on the assessor's website, it identifies this property as belonging to the town owner. And it also says owner unknown. And so, like in the past, when this property's been discussed, people have said, oh, well, it couldn't be taken by adverse possession because it belongs to the town of Lunenburg. But now I hear you tonight saying, you're like, well, it doesn't belong to the town.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying if it doesn't, you could do adverse possession, but if it is owned by the town, you can't. That's why we're saying we don't know, because we don't have a deed on the property.
And given no one else is going to be interested in this property other than Ms. St. Bring, and so if the town were to take and pass the article, even if they didn't own it, in 2 years from now, she will have adversely possessed it for, more than 20 years. Either way, she can take it, but it's just, the ambiguity here is a little...
And that's why we're in the situation we are. When I was tax collector, we had properties that were land of low value that weren't thing, and we had X amount of dollars to work on tax titles. I worked on the ones that would get $5,000, not the ones that we'd have to spend $5,000 for a title search. So towns don't do it because it's not worthwhile, and the issue that happens with this is that you may take it by adverse possession, but you still don't have clear title. In order to prove the title, you would have to go to land court to prove that you took it by adverse possession, documenting what you did over that time and that nobody else took the property from you. So there's a bunch of law stuff here, and I'm not trying to make it more complicated than it is, but it is. I thought the town owned it when I first heard about this. I assumed it. When I just pulled up the assessor's map that said unknown owner, that says to me, it's assumed it's town land, but unless the town took some action, it's not town land.
It says owner two, and I'm assuming it's some sort of historical typo. It says Dickerson, so Dickinson. So I wonder if it could a little bit end up back in Hickory Hills jurisdiction versus the town's.
Well, that's why I'm here, because the Hickory Hills Board of Directors has decided that they would like to see it conveyed to Jefferson Bay.
So then...
That's why they voted last night unanimously to send me here to make that statement.
Do they know that they own it?
No, they didn't vote. They didn't vote to convey it. They voted to support it.
Support it, yeah.
Oh, okay. So they don't know that they own it?
Right. So that's part
They
of
were
the...
told they didn't know it. Okay. By the town assessor last year.
But the town assessor is not an attorney,
Right.
a title attorney, but based on the deed of Hickory Hills Lake, the answer is no. That's, the meat and bounds of the lake does not include that. So that's clear. So when you start doing the title search of who conveyed out land, different things, that's why this is land of unknown, because this slipped through some scrivener's description of what the property is and isn't. So it's not that we're supporting.
It is a piece of property. And through all my research, I've learned that a lot of these little things are simply mistakes that somebody drew, their line too long on a map. And it looks like this, that could be this. I just don't understand why it wasn't on maps and now it's on maps in the town.
So some of the things that going way back when, they used to do rods and chains, and rods and chains sagged, and people did surveying to a post and a stone fence and other things like that. We now have computers and GPS, and we're now finding out that things weren't done quite properly. When you lay out a road, you figure out where the layout of the road is, and you give it off to the property owners, and the town gets to keep what's left. But when you have a piece of property that nobody was interested in, you keep deeding the land around it out and out and out and out, and nobody deals with this. So it could be that it was supposed to be part of this parcel, could have been part of the lake, could have been part of something else, and somebody forgot it. But unless you did the search through it, this is what went on with Lake Shirley. It used to be Shirley Reservoir because it was a reservoir for the industry. when the town took land for the dam, it's not clear what we actually took. And there's title issues there, so.
So maps aren't really going to help us. You know, any maps that you guys might have that I'm not aware of are not going to help us.
Probably not. I'm going to give you the realistic answer. If you had a tax collector taking, we probably would have already had it saying Town of Lunenburg taken a certain point. That probably is not there. I didn't realize that this was as confusing as it was. So it's not clear that the town has any interest in the property.
Okay.
So are you recommending that Deborah and Frank do a title search? Is that what you're recommending?
Bob Ebersol is recommending that. Because that would give you clear title, or at least understand who you'd have to go, because it could be the descendants of Dickinson. Now, who that is now, there are some, and that's one of the issues. You go down several generations, and you have to get people to sign off on that property, or you go to land court and you say, let's get this declared a different way, so.
My goodness, it sounds like mineral rights. Mr. Passios?
Just very quickly.
It would be mineral rights if you could put a town well there.
That's.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Just a little bit of real quick history. Got a piece of property up in New Hampshire that for many years it's been conveyed as X lot number, excluding 5 acres in the southeast corner. And all they've done is cut and pasted from one deed to the next for about 100 years. Well, with a full title search on that 5 acres, the last deed was recorded 102 years ago, and then it falls off the map completely, except for a bank mortgage on a, that was apparently, the mortgage was taken, the land was taken by the bank is what it looks like, and then the mortgage was written back to the original owner that sold it 102 years ago. So the title, clear title is still a problem with that.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions, or?
I guess I'm just not clear where the warrant stands then. I mean, I understand I should go do the title search, and that's for me to do through any entity that I pick, or do you pick, or?
Whoever you would like
Okay,
to.
and then where does the warrant stand?
I think the article can go.
The article is on the warrant.
Okay, all right, that's.
So you would still
stand.
present, and there can still be action taken.
Okay, all right, thank you for your consideration, thank you.
Thank you. All right, before I close the public hearing, are there any questions, comments? Any public, okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and then I think what we're going to do is we'll take our action, and then I'll just ask if you want to take any action, and we'll just go back and forth that way. On Article 1, I think what I'm going to do is accept a motion to not make any recommendation at this time.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so, and then my notes, so we're going to take action at a special town meeting, is that correct? There will be action, okay, so Article 1.
I'll make a motion that we take no action until town meeting. What's our wording? Our recommendation will be made at town meeting.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate. So at this point, again, this is going to be, I'll take a motion to wait for town meeting.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Make a motion we recommend at town meeting.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, on Article 3, we can either take make a recommendation to approve the transfer from the, which account? Payroll?
Salary reserve.
Salary reserve account in the amount of $10,687.28, is that what it was?
Yes.
Okay.
10,688.
Well, actually, no, we put the exact amount when we make the motion.
You don't want to have an unexpended article hanging out there for 20 cents.
That's exactly it.
An existing contract?
This is yes, this is a contract that's been signed. So do I have a motion to either put off or to make that transfer, make a recommendation for approval?
I make a motion that the Finance Committee recommends approval To take $10,687.27, is that right?
Was it 27 or 28 cents? We'll get the, oh, it's probably 27.
26.
Okay, we were so close.
Overspent.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 3 in the amount read by John Henshaw.
And amended by Heather.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 4 is to see if the town will vote to appropriate all or a portion of the net premium. The net premium is in the amount of $104,659.15 with the purpose of rescinding the borrowing. So do I have a motion to make a recommendation at this time, or a motion to hold the recommendation until town meeting?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval to use the net premium of $104,659.15
To the purpose in Article 4.
To the purpose of the article.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 4 in the amount of $104,659.15 as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, since we didn't hear from the sewer committee on, or the sewer commission on moving their funds to retained earnings, we can either make a motion to recommend approval, or we can wait for a special town meeting. Do I have a motion either way?
Wait for special town meeting.
Okay, so Jay made the motion to wait for a special town meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion, we recommend at town meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 6, I will accept a motion for the, unless anybody thinks that there's
There's no financial.
no financial impact, right, so I mean, basically, I think that we'll just say, do I have a motion to say no
There's
financial
a motion.
impact?
There's no
That's the motion.
financial impact.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion, we recommend approval of Article 6.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Article 7, the salary administration plan, since that's not completed, I would accept a motion to not make any recommendation until special town meeting.
It also has no financial impact, she said.
Also has
right?
no financial
Yeah, I don't think
impact, she
it's no
said.
financial, no direct financial.
So we can
effect.
vote on no financial impact.
Or we don't, we're mute.
Okay.
This one was financial.
Yeah, no, I guess I was just, okay.
This one has not.
Yep.
I make a motion that it's no financial impact.
I guess the reason why I'm leaning no recommendation is I have not read the document. And so, I understand that there's no financial impact, but I didn't see that there's no financial impact, so,
We can wait till town meeting.
Wait till town meeting then.
okay, so I would prefer to wait for a special town meeting. Did you just make that motion, Jay?
Yes, wait till
Can I have a
special
second
town
for that?
meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, okay.
I make a motion, we recommend Article 17 at town meeting.
7, you mean?
Yeah.
Article
To
7.
postpone recommendation.
Article 7. Yeah, we're not at 17 yet.
Sorry, 7.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then Article 8, I would accept a motion to wait for a special town meeting when we find out that it's going to be for nothing. That would be great.
5,000 or nothing.
Yeah.
It's going to be 5,000 or nothing.
Yeah,
So
he
Okay,
made.
so moved. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I make a motion, we wait till town meeting to recommend Article 8.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 9, we see no financial impact. So can I have a motion and a second to that effect?
I make a motion that there's no financial impact on Article 9.
I will second Mark's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion, we make a recommendation at town meeting on Article 9.
Second.
Any discussion?
I guess I don't know why we wouldn't let's recommend it. I mean, we've
I'm
heard
not-
about it a couple of times.
I'm not ready to accept necessarily accept the times.
Oh,
I just think we need a little discussion on that one.
yep, yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 10, I'll accept a motion that I'm going to assume that we see no financial impact.
Correct, there's a motion that has no financial impact.
Okay, Mark moved.
Second.
Okay, John, second. All in favor? Aye.
I make a motion, we wait till town meeting to recommend Article 10.
Second.
The reason being, I'd like to see the language. I'm going to probably recommend it, but I'd like to see the language.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Okay, Article 11, to delete the number 180 and insert 540. Do we see a financial impact?
I don't know yet.
Okay, so you want to wait for town meeting?
I'd like to.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
I'll make a motion, we make a recommendation at town meeting on Article 11.
Was that a second? Yeah.
Yes.
All those, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 12, is going to be the protective bylaw. We're going to, does anybody see a financial impact?
I do not.
Okay, so Jay made a motion for no financial impact. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would make a motion that we recommend approval, recommend at town meeting Articles 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Those are all zoning. We'll do the marijuana on separate.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, in order to catch up, I'm going to see no financial impact, I think, all the way through. So do I have a motion to that effect?
Move.
All,
No financial impact.
Okay.
14 and 15.
Okay, and then all the so moves, one of you is a second. And all in favor? Aye. Okay. Then we'll move right on to the marijuana, and I think that, do we see financial impact? Does anybody?
Not in the next 6 months.
Not in the next 6 months. All right, Michelle?
Well, there would be if it was retail, and I understand, that would be part of what we'd be voting on, would have a financial impact, correct?
Well, it's the moratorium.
It's just the moratorium.
Has no direct
So that
financial
doesn't,
impact.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, got it.
So,
Did you do Article 16 in that last one?
No, we just threw 15.
no, we just did 15, so no. I'm sorry.
We're on 16 now.
116 now, yeah.
So do we see financial, we see no financial impact, so I have a motion.
Second.
And, well, I saw Mark shake his head, so Mark made the motion, John seconded, and all in favor? Okay.
I would make a motion, we make recommendation at town meeting for Article 16.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, to see if the town will vote to amend the, related to plastic bags. Do we see a financial impact?
I don't.
No.
Do I have a motion to that effect? Okay, Jay's motioning.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So Finance Committee sees no financial impact.
I make a motion that we make recommendation at town meeting on Article 17.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 18, do we see a financial impact? And if we're not sure, we can always wait.
Unless somebody wants to wait.
And I would like to wait, okay?
I'd like to wait too.
Recommendation STM.
More from the town.
Okay, so who made the motion to recommend at town meeting?
I make the motion to wait for.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion, we recommend approval at town meeting for Article 18.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unless there's anything that anyone has from the Finance Committee, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.